so happy to be here.
So I thought we could go ahead and just get started with the beginning of the Supergirl journey, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm under the impression that after the success of Superman and sort of discovering Christopher Reeve, they actively wanted to find somebody, a fresh face and new talent, and this was your first feature, correct?
Yes, it was. I was at Performing Arts High School, and I have friends from Performing Arts here tonight, and I had told my parents that I didn't want to go straight to college. I wanted to take a year off and see if I could get work, and then I think we graduated in June of 1982, and then in that September was when the audition came in for Supergirl. And I had two agents at the time. One sent me up for The Best Friend, and the other sent me up for Supergirl, so I went with that.
Yeah,
agent that's
one of those agents had definitely a better eye. Well, can you talk to me a little bit about the casting process, right? You know, obviously, as you just said, they're reading for multiple roles, but, you know, Superman the movie was a huge deal, right? And so I could only imagine being fresh out of high school or fresh out of, you know, the original, your schooling, and being up for this life-changing opportunity.
Yeah, it was definitely, I think, one of the biggest parts I'd ever auditioned for, so that was after doing like a Juicy Fruit commercial and like a Pepsi. And when we were at high school, we weren't allowed to really work that. I mean, some of us, Erica Gimple is in the house, I'm just telling you, she played Coco in Fame, we were in the same class, and she did the Fame television series while we were in high school, so she kind of, I think, was the exception. We did little things, but Supergirl for sure was one of the biggest parts, and you know, we had a really good training at Performing Arts High School, so when I got the audition for that, my mom helped sew a cape for me, and we had I don't know which of our acting teachers told us this, but there was this like acting idea, the obstacle strengthens the will, and so I remember I walked into the audition and nobody had a cape. Like, that wasn't happening. And I had, the nerves were so crazy, and I remember that thing like the obstacle strengthens the will, like you just sort of push through, and so, yeah.
Do you still have the cape?
I do not.
Oh, all right. Next question. Okay, so let's talk about this cast, because this cast that you guys are about to see when we screen the movie, I mean, if you don't remember, whoa, we're talking Mia Farrow, Peter O'Toole, Faye Dunaway, Peter Cook. Like, these are some heavy hitters, and I can only imagine as a performer myself, sometimes even just interviewing people that you kind of know and admire can be overwhelming, and so I can only imagine maybe, okay, not only does this entire movie rest on your shoulders, but also here's Peter O'Toole for you to do a bunch of stuff.
That was the wild, I mean, the Peter O'Toole, all of them that you mentioned, but Peter O'Toole especially, that was just so auspicious that he was playing that part, and I've told this story before, but I do like to share it, that there's so much downtime when you're making movies, and I remember him saying to me, Peter O'Toole saying to me at one point, like, do some Shakespeare for me. Do you know any Shakespeare? And I had known this speech from Romeo and Juliet, now knowest the mask of night is on my face, else would a maiden's blush would paint my cheek for that which thou so heard me speak tonight. And my hands were flailing in the air, and I was just like the most American doing Shakespeare. And he said to me, I want you to imagine that you're holding a dandelion between your thumb and your forefinger, both hands, and now do it again. And then I did it again, and the poetry is the thing that then came through. And that was just, I mean, that has stayed with me forever, of how flailing doesn't necessarily get your message across as strongly as Shakespeare.
Fair enough, and what a good way to learn that lesson. I also was doing a little bit of reading before I came here tonight and had read a story that you told about a song that you guys had. Did you all sing together, or was there a...
Oh, he taught me this great round, white sand, gray sand, which I'm sure there are people that have heard. It's Yeah, he did sing Peter O'Toole too, but there wasn't much singing on the set as a general rule, I have to say. There was more of the wire work and the, you know, getting your hair and makeup done.
Yes, so I actually would like to talk about the wire work because okay, so we live in a world now where superheroes are all day, every day, TV, movies, games, digital, just everywhere. And it is amazing. It's such a time to be a fan, which is great. But I don't think that it should be lost on anybody who's about to see this movie, like the practical, physical demands. When I rewatched this for DC Universe, the movie is also streaming on DC Universe, which is very cool. And we did a panel and we talked about it. We were all so impressed by, you know, watching the movie however many years later, by how frankly, how graceful and wonderful you are in that scenario, but also like how the effects actually look.
And in fact, the special effects have not changed that much since 1982, when we were shooting in 1983. Certainly the CGI, like they can make Melissa Benoist now, she can pop in and out. That's extraordinary how they can do the flying stuff. But there's still the wire work, and a friend of mine was telling me that this reminds me of this, that wire work hasn't changed much, and either has sound. Those people in television and film know, like, sound is still the same equipment as like 30 years ago, 40 years, 50. They still haven't figured out quite how to make that's not really that interesting, but it is to me.
I think it's
something
very
I like to do.
Listen, nothing will take you out of something faster than bad sound.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
yeah, let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about the training, like physical training. So I would imagine coming from, you know, on stage and performing arts. Obviously, you're used to living in your body and working with your body, but you know, we see now like the Chris Pratts of the world going from, you know, Parks and Rec to like Star-Lord, and these actors are required to train and put their bodies through crazy things.
In fact, Alf Joint, who trained me, trained Christopher Reeve, and I was maybe like 118 pounds, and I gained 20 pounds, and the way that he did that, it wasn't just weightlifting. He had me do it was almost 4 months of physical training, and it was trampolining, and horseback riding, and fencing, and swimming, and what else was there? Like any kind of sporty thing that you could do, he would have you do just to get, and of course the wire work, training a lot with learning how to go up in the air and do a somersault and a swan dive and things like that. Yeah, he was an incredible human being. He passed away, just very kind-hearted and had that great sense of humor where you just felt very safe, like you were in good hands.
I feel like that's kind of important, though, especially in this atmosphere where, you know, like you need to feel like you're safe.
Yes, definitely, for sure.
So, speaking of Christopher Reeve, there is, you know, Hollywood lore and legend that he was supposed to be in Supergirl.
Yes.
But he did not end up being in the movie. There's a fun little wink and nod at him.
Right, with the poster.
Yeah, with the poster, which you guys will see in just a minute. But I was reading a story, and again, I don't know, you know, you read these things on the internet, you don't know if they're really true or not, but that you two had met and were in New York, and maybe there was like something that was an accident that had come.
Right. We were friends, and we were at Pinewood Studios at the same time. He was prepping, I think, Superman 3, and we did become friends, and we were in New York City, and it was very late at night when I used to stay up late at night. And we were on Central Park South, I think it was, and it must have been quite late, and these two fire trucks go by, like, really, it was obviously something very bad was going on, and Chris turned to me and said, like, well, here's Superman and Supergirl, and there's just nothing we can do to help. Yeah, he had a great sense of humor.
Yeah. And so I loved that story that you just told us about Peter O'Toole and learning from him, you know, in terms of your craft. Did Chris ever give you any sort of, you know, feedback or not advice, but like, did he ever talk to you about?
That's a really good question. I don't remember specifically him saying, you know, watch out for this or that kind of thing, but I think he was very aware that the success of that movie was very difficult to go into other parts, and I think he was just more transparent about that, saying this can happen. One of the, I don't know, silver linings of Supergirl not doing a 2 and a 3 is I was able to do other roles, and yeah.
Well, I would like to ask you too, because, you know, so for me, I grew up on all the, as I said, all the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. I grew up on Supergirl. There are certain values and ideals that I really admire in the DC universe, but specifically with the super, you know, the characters. And I love that Supergirl is on TV right now. I love that she is animated in animated form. I love that this movie is accessible for so many fans. I know that you were so young when you got this role, but did it occur to you what this representation could mean or would mean? Because even I mean, I'm about Melissa Benoist's age, and I look at her and I'm like, oh my God, I want to be like you when I grow up, you know?
It's funny, there's been so much more awareness since the Me Too movement and all this wave of us waking up to a lot of issues that have always been going on for women, but I think we're in a particular time. But I have to say, when I did Supergirl, that was not the #1 thing in the forefront, which I feel honestly a little embarrassed about, that wasn't as, looking back on it, you know, all these same things were still going on, but it's taken 20, 30 years, or the fight continues even more than 30 years ago for this awareness of inequality, fair pay, all the things we know about in the hashtag #MeToo. But for me, it was more just this incredible thing of my life changed, 100% my life changed, and it changed for the better. It was an incredible adventure, living in England for a year, and just having, you know, an extraordinary wind at my back, and doing this kind of part of being a superhero. That was really pretty wild.
Kara is such an amazing character in so many different iterations, and I think my favorite scene in Supergirl is the Phantom Zone sequence.
Right.
So we, you know, obviously in the Donner movies, or the Chris Reeve movies, we hint at the Phantom Zone. You see a little of the Phantom Zone, but something that Supergirl does that's so cool is you actually get to go inside.
This is actually really a funny thing about that. So I'm working with Peter O'Toole, and this is before I was doing improv and was part of this theater troupe, the Boubelaires, and Turbine Arts now, which I'm part of, where you basically, in improv or clown, you'll throw yourself in. So we were shooting the Phantom Zone. This is when I'm still 18 and trying to do it right. And I'm thinking, like, we're in the Phantom Zone, and I'm acting, we're in the Phantom Zone, and I'm, you know, just this very small, like, it's scary, we're in the, and I look over, oh no, when the movie's done and it comes out, and you'll see Peter O'Toole is full on, like, arms up and head, you know, blowing in fake wind, and I was like, oh my God, I'm like horrible, like you just see me kind of prancing, like, where's he? Peter O'Toole is like Lawrence of Arabia, like we're in the zone, and anyway, so it was a good lesson to learn, like film acting can be full of, you know.
Yes, but I choose to read it as just Kara was very confident, right?
Oh, there you go.
Because
like, when's my mannequin?
Exactly. Not worried about this silly old Phantom Zone.
Yeah, no.
This is gonna be fine. It's right. No, because Zoltar is like, you know, he's losing his mind, and at one point, Kara says, like, no, we're not gonna die, because I'm not gonna let it, like, it's not gonna happen. So get up and let's go. And to me, that is such in the whole movie, that's my favorite scene, not only because I like the special effects and I like the two of you together, but that message of Kara just saying, no, we're not giving up. We're staying hopeful, we're doing this.
Okay, I like your version.
Okay, I will be the Kara to your Zoltar. Speaking of the bigger DC universe, one of the things that I love that DC does and has done throughout so many properties is they work with the same actors in different roles. Yeah. And so, you know, not only were you obviously Supergirl, but we're on Smallville and have done some voiceover work, and also now on Supergirl, the TV show. And yes, give a round of applause. I love Supergirl, the TV show. Yeah. But can you talk a little bit about, like, you know, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, fan culture and superhero culture was not what it was then. But now to see how this universe sort of has spanned your entire, film and television career, that's got to be really amazing.
Very fun to be asked to do the different parts, and I'm sure, I hope grandmother comes somewhere down. That'll be fun. That's the next one coming down. I think they're so smart, not just publicity-wise, but it's just so smart for people that love this genre and love the DC universe to see the actors showing up in the different parts, and they got very smart about that. Greg Berlanti is just a super genius with folding people in, and
I loved, for me especially, watching season 1 of Supergirl and seeing all the familiar faces and going, oh my God, they did that. That's so cool. Speaking of the TV show, we mentioned Melissa Benoist a little earlier, but so you sat with Chris Reeve, and he had been Superman before. Did you talk to Melissa at all about going, not in any way, about taking on
I met her when we did the table reading for the pilot of Supergirl, and I say this to everybody, and I mean it with all my heart. She is one of the all-time, just incredibly kind, so dedicated, hard-working actresses. She did not get the same training time. I think, mine was like 3 or 4 months. Hers was a much more truncated, just because of the schedule, but everybody on the crew loves her. She's just got a kind word for everybody, and I can't say enough good things about her. I wouldn't say I ever gave her advice, but I do feel like it was a fun thing. My husband and I were in New York, and she was playing Carole King in Beautiful, and we got these incredible seats, and I really did feel like it was like watching my daughter up there. I don't know if you guys know, Melissa Benoist is this triple threat. You probably do know from the crossover episode or whichever, where she did her sing and dance. But she was incredible, her singing and just her stage presence was just beautiful.
Well, speaking of the crossover events, there's a huge thing happening in the Arrowverse, which is Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yeah, this is gonna, y'all. Oh man. So, are you gonna be appearing in any of that?
I don't know yet.
Oh, okay. That was a good answer. All right, not gonna get any more out of you. Okay, all right, fair enough. Well, and is there anything else that you have coming up, whether it's inside the DCU or otherwise?
Not right now. Well, I have this movie I did that's coming out called Confetti, but I don't have the date yet for that.
So we'll keep. Your music.
I just finished,
speaking of triple threat.
My friends are here, or my Jewish mother. So, I've composed 6 records, and I just finished a 6th record based on the Selkie myth, this Irish seal woman story and a fisherman, and that should be releasing at the end of August, probably. You can find it on iTunes and Amazon and CD Baby. Thank you.
That's great. Well, yes, round of applause, please. This has been such a treat for me.
Thank you. You're incredible.
You are incredible.
Thank you guys for all showing up.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Helen Slater, our Supergirl.